Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy you're here with me today. If you follow me on social media or have been listening to this podcast for very long, you know that I'm all about perspective shifting, paradigm bending, thought provoking ideas. And today I'm really going to challenge you. Maybe some of you more than others, but that's okay. We're stretching our limits and trying to understand parenting on a deeper level, right? So please let me know how this lands today because we are taking on pop psychology and talking about love languages. It's one of the most well known relationship frameworks I can think of, and it seems like everyone knows their love language: gifts, quality time, acts of service, physical touch, words of affirmation. Sounds familiar, right? We all gravitate towards one of those big five, although my husband swears that my love language is food, and honestly, he's not wrong. The gist is that we all have a unique way of feeling loved. And when people know this about us, they can love us better. And then in return, when we know their love language, we can love them better in the ways that matter most. Now, as I record this, Valentine's Day is just around the corner, and it's a holiday built around love languages. And don't get me wrong, I don't hate love languages. I think they offer us something important: a shared vocabulary, a way to say, this is how I feel cared for, and that matters. But here's what I keep thinking when I approach this from a parenting perspective. And it's not wondering what my kids' love languages are, even though that's also helpful information. It's that when we focus on love languages, we're often focused on behaviors: what to give, what to do, how to act. And we miss what actually makes love feel safe. And our kids notice this. They watch how love works in our home. They notice how we connect and how we disconnect. They notice what happens when someone is disappointed, when someone feels overwhelmed, or when someone doesn't get what they hoped for. And that's where attachment comes in. Attachment isn't about gifts or activities or even clever words of affirmation. Attachment is about how safe someone feels in relationship, how they experience comfort, care, and consistency when things get hard. It's about whether our loved ones, including our kids, can rely on us to be present and steady, even when emotions run high and even when circumstances aren't ideal. So sometimes knowing a love language isn't enough, even when we do the love language. For example, maybe your partner's love language is acts of service, and you spend the evening doing the dishes, folding laundry, and preparing a nice dinner. But if you do it distractedly or resentfully or without checking in emotionally, they might not feel seen or cared for. Maybe your child's love language is physical touch, and you sit with them and give them hugs. But if your attention is split, your phone is out, or you respond with frustration when you get overstimulated, the touch doesn't feel safe. It doesn't communicate, I'm here with you. Or another example might be that they appreciate words of affirmation, and you offer encouragement and praise, but if it's rushed or flat, or paired with tension or criticism, the words alone can feel empty. The behaviors are happening in all of these cases. The form is there, but the deeper sense of connection and safety can still be missing. And that's what attachment builds. That's the piece that love languages alone can't reach. And that's the piece I think we need to talk about. The difference between surface level ways of how we show love and the deeper sense of security that actually shapes our kids, our partnerships, and the way we experience love ourselves. Because the thing is, love languages are not a bad thing. They do something really important. They give us structure. They give us a starting point to really notice each other, to create awareness, to reduce miscommunication. They give us permission to say, hey, this matters to me, and here's a way that you can show me you care. But even when we get them right, when we do the thing that our partner or our child says makes them feel loved, it's not always enough. And I see this all the time in my work with parents and couples, that even when we're loving by the book, some couples still feel lonely. Some kids still act out. Resentment still sneaks in. And that's not a failure on your part necessarily. It's actually a clue, because love languages describe preferences, what feels good, but not what actually creates safety. To get really into the words here, love languages are about form. They're the what of love. But attachment is about the feeling, which is the how. How safe do I feel in this relationship? Think about it this way. You could plan a perfect dinner. You can buy the exact right gift. You can say just the right thing. But if your partner senses judgment, distraction, or distance underneath it all, they may leave the table feeling unseen, or a child can get every hug they want, every I love you they ask for, and still feel anxious or disconnected if the grown-ups around them aren't emotionally present and regulated and responsive when things get hard. Because, okay, this is the most important thing I'm going to say today, so I want to make sure you hear it. Because you can speak someone's love language and still be emotionally unavailable. Okay? That is worth repeating. So please go back and hear that again. You can get all the behaviors right and still miss the part that matters most. And that's what makes love languages feel helpful, but limited. They're a tool, not the whole toolbox. They help us notice differences. They reduce some friction. They make love a little more tangible, but they don't guarantee that the emotional thread underneath, that safety, that security, the feeling of being truly seen, is actually there. Love languages assume something pretty simple. If I learn your preference, I can adjust. If I know you feel loved through physical touch, I'll be more affectionate. If I know you value acts of service, I will help you more. If you need words of affirmation, I will say them. And just like we've talked about, sometimes that works. But let's look at the nuance here because it's not always as simple as just adjusting. What happens when you know exactly how your partner wants to be loved and it still feels hard to show up that way? What happens when resentment creeps in? Or when you find yourself thinking, oh, why can't they just appreciate what I'm already doing? And this is the gap I see all the time. Because under stress, we don't give from strategy. We give from our wiring. Love languages live in the conscious mind. I'll try harder. I'll adjust. I will remember. But attachment lives in the nervous system. And when you're tired, overwhelmed, triggered, or feeling disconnected, you default to whatever your nervous system learned about closeness growing up, not necessarily what the quiz is telling you to do. So imagine this dynamic. One partner deeply values physical touch. That's how they feel reassured, connected, secure. The other partner expresses love most naturally through acts of service. On paper, this is simple, right? Just meet in the middle. But what if physical touch feels vulnerable to one of them? What if closeness was unpredictable growing up? Or what if intimacy feels overwhelming when they're stressed or impossible when they don't feel emotionally connected? Now it's not about preference anymore. It's about protection. Meanwhile, the partner who longs for touch starts to feel rejected, unwanted, unseen. So they start to pull back emotionally. And the acts of service partner thinks, I'm doing so much. Why doesn't it matter? And slowly, unconsciously, love then becomes transactional. I'll give you this if you give me that. But the problem isn't effort. The problem is safety. Because sometimes the way we want to receive love is rooted in a wound. And sometimes the way we struggle to give love is rooted in one too. Now, what does that mean? Sometimes the way we most long to give or receive love is shaped by what felt missing or inconsistent or unsafe growing up. So let's go through some of these because I think it's important to really be able to see what this looks like. If you were criticized as a child or rarely affirmed, words of affirmation may feel deeply regulating, but they also may not come naturally as we speak to others. If you had to grow up too fast or carry too much responsibility, acts of service might feel like relief, like finally not having to do everything alone, but also showing up for others may trigger resentment. If attention was divided or inconsistent, quality time may feel like proof that you matter, but making time for others might not be fulfilling. You might not be able to stop thinking of the other things you could be doing. If affection was unpredictable, physical touch might feel like reassurance. But if it was connected to abuse, it might feel too vulnerable to express love through affection. And sometimes gifts represent security, thoughtfulness, or stability if those things felt scarce as a child. But they may also represent that love was transactional or used as a replacement for genuine connection. That doesn't mean your love language is just trauma, right? It means our preferences can carry history. And under stress, those histories start to get really loud. A love language can be a genuine preference, but it can also be a protective adaptation. And sometimes it's both. That doesn't make them useless. It just means they don't go deep enough. They don't explain why certain expressions of love feel easy for us, and others feel almost impossible under stress. And they don't explain why, when we feel insecure or disconnected, we default to our old relational patterns. But attachment does, because attachment isn't about preference. It's about what your nervous system believes is safe. So in a way, thinking about love languages can be the first step. But if we stop there, we're missing the point. The deeper work, the part that actually shapes relationships and kids' sense of safety, is about attachment. So if love languages are the form of love, attachment is the felt experience. It's the part that answers a single incredibly important question, the question that actually shapes how we connect with others for life. When I'm distressed, what happens? That's it. That's the core of attachment. And here's something important that gets misunderstood all the time. Your attachment orientation isn't a personality type. It's not like an Enneagram number or a label that you stick on yourself. Attachment is your nervous system's strategy for closeness and distance. It's how your body learned to protect you in relationships. Do I move toward people when I'm hurting, or do I shut down and pull away? Do I get louder, more anxious, more demanding, or do I get quiet, independent, maybe self-sufficient? Those patterns aren't character flaws, they're adaptations. And the same is true for our kids. We want to know where we stand with the people we love when we're under stress. So for a child, this question shows up in every meltdown, every scraped knee, every tearful night. Do you turn toward them even when you're tired? Do you minimize their feelings? Like, it's not that big of a deal. Do you get overwhelmed and shut down? Or do you stay present, really breathe through it and help them navigate those big feelings? For a partner, the same question shows up just in grown-up ways. Do you pursue connection when there's tension? Do you withdraw when things get hard? Do you criticize, stonewall, or do you repair? Do you show up again and again, even when it's uncomfortable? Attachment is about safety. It's about knowing that when things go sideways, the people who matter will still be there. And here's where it gets really interesting. Your kids aren't sitting around asking, did you spend quality time with me today? Or did you remember my love language, Mom? No, they're asking, often unconsciously, am I safe with you when I'm big and messy? That question is being answered every single day in how you respond when they're frustrated, they're sad, when they're testing boundaries. Every tantrum, every demand, every no is a data point in the attachment ledger. And then the same goes for our adult relationships. When conflict or disappointment arises, or when someone makes a mistake, attachment is the lens through which we judge whether love feels reliable and consistent or volatile and empty. Think of attachment like the nervous system, not just theirs, but yours too. Your child's sense of safety mirrors your ability to regulate, your capacity to respond without shutting down or flooding. Your partner's sense of security mirrors your willingness to stay engaged, repair the ruptures, and tolerate the discomfort that comes with real intimacy. So it's not just about what you do. It's about how you show up in your nervous system. That is what creates real security. Attachment isn't a checklist. It's not about doing the right thing every time. It's about presence, attunement, and consistency over time. It's about showing up even when it's messy, even when it's uncomfortable, and even when you don't feel like it. Because every time you do, your child and your partner is learning something profound, that love can be steady, love can be safe, love can survive the hard times. And that is the difference between surface level connection and deep, enduring attachment. So let's zoom in on what this actually looks like in parenting. Because a lot of us are busy doing all the right things, but we're still missing the point. Surface level parenting is all about the behaviors, checklists, curating the perfect highlight reel. It's filling the calendar with activities like piano lessons, soccer practice, and craft projects. It's buying the toys, the gadgets, the perfect birthday presents. It's planning the family trips, the themed parties, the weekend outings that look really beautiful in photos. It's reading all the parenting books and trying to follow the steps exactly right. Again, none of it's wrong. It's caring. It's effort. But if that's where it stops, it can still miss the deeper work of building security. Let's look at this like landscaping, because that's literally what I'm looking at as I record this and I'm staring out into my yard. If I plant the most beautiful green grass, trees, shrubs, flowers, and then I water it for 1 minute every hour all summer long, my yard is going to look stunning. Everything will grow quickly. It will bloom, it will look lush and impressive, and from the outside, it will look like I've done everything right. But here's the problem. If the water only ever hits the surface, the roots will never have to dig deep. So the first time the sun gets too hot, or I get tired and stop showing up so consistently, or maybe even miss a day, the grass starts to shrivel. The shrubs begin to wilt, and the flowers are going to droop almost instantly because I've trained the roots to live shallow. Watering for beauty is rewarding. You get fast results. It looks good. It feels good, but it doesn't build resilience. It doesn't prepare the system to survive stress. Deep watering, on the other hand, looks different. You water less frequently, but you soak the soil. You let the water penetrate. You force the roots to grow down, to search, to anchor, to stabilize. And then when the heat comes, because it will, the yard can withstand it. Attachment is the deep watering. Surface level parenting is frequent, visible, impressive, but shallow. It's the activities, the gifts, the perfectly planned moments. And again, those things aren't bad. They're what adds the beauty. But if they're not paired with emotional depth, with attunement, repair, regulation, then the roots of your child's security don't grow deep. And this goes for our partners as well. When stress hits, when middle school drama starts, when friendships get complicated, when finances get tight, when our hearts get broken, that's when we find out how deep the roots go. Secure attachment isn't built by constant surface level gestures. It's not about what you do. It's about how you show up. It's built by staying present long enough for the roots to grow. So this looks like emotional attunement. It's repair after rupture. It's regulating yourself before you respond, staying connected during conflict, not ignoring, shaming, or punishing from a place of disconnection, but guiding them back towards safety and understanding. And I'm just going to say it one more time because it's important. Attachment is built in those hard moments, not in the highlight reel. Your kids don't just remember the crafts and the tricks and the gifts, although I promise they will. They love those things. But they also remember the moments when they felt seen and heard and safe, even when life was hard. They remember that your love didn't vanish when they were messy and emotional or demanding. Surface level parenting can look good. It can earn you praise from social media, from other parents, from yourself even. But secure attachment parenting builds resilience, trust, and lifelong sense of safety. Now, there's another layer to this that we cannot ignore, and that is that your kids aren't just experiencing love from you directly. They're watching how love operates between the adults in their life. And here's where the love language framework can actually distract us. Your kids don't primarily absorb love by watching you buy flowers, and they don't internalize security because you planned a date night. They don't build attachment because you said the right words or kissed each other in the kitchen. Those things are gestures. They're expressions. What they're really studying is the emotional undercurrent. They're watching what happens when one of you is stressed. They're watching how you handle disappointment. They're watching whether tension creates distance or leads to repair. What they're noticing is whether affection is steady or if it's fragile. We can speak each other's love languages perfectly and do all the things. But if conflict leads to coldness, and if hurt is leading to withdrawal, and if mistakes go unrepaired, your child's nervous system is learning something much louder than the gestures. In all of these interactions, they're learning whether love feels safe. And this is the difference between form and foundation. Remember that the form of love is what we can see. The behaviors, the rituals, the celebrations. But the foundation of love, the attachment, is what happens when things are uncomfortable. And that's what children encode. They don't grow up looking for someone who buys the best presents. They're growing up looking for what feels familiar in their nervous system. Secure, insecure, steady, or unpredictable, repairing or distancing. Because the kind of love your kids are growing up inside of is the kind of love they'll look for later. Not consciously, not because they sat down and made a checklist, but because that's where their nervous system will recognize it as home. And that's the generational thread, how attachment is passed down. You see how that works? So if attachment isn't built through grand gestures, if it's not secured by getting every love language right, then what actually does build it? I'm going to give you 3 anchors. These aren't rules. They're not perfection standards. They're anchors that still give you some space to do it your way, because attachment isn't about intensity. It's about consistency. So anchor number 1 is emotional responsiveness. You're going to miss cues. You're going to get it wrong. You are going to misread people sometimes. That is not what breaks attachment. What builds attachment is your willingness to notice, to turn toward, and to respond when distress shows up. Responsiveness says, your emotions don't scare me. I'm right here. It doesn't mean you fix everything. It just means you stay engaged. And that staying power, that repeated experience of, I can bring my feelings here and not lose connection, that is what wires security. So anchor number 2 is repair. Now this one is everything, because you will rupture. You will snap. You will raise your voice. You will get overwhelmed. Secure attachment is not built by never messing up. It's built in what happens next. Repair sounds like, I didn't handle that very well. I'm sorry I yelled. You didn't deserve that tone. Or let's try that again. And here's the powerful part. When your child sees you take ownership, their nervous system learns that conflict doesn't mean abandonment. They learn that relationships can bend without breaking and that mistakes are survivable. And that is far more powerful than any gesture of any love language. Your 3rd anchor is going to be regulation. Now, this is the quiet foundation underneath everything. Your nervous system, okay, is the climate of your home. If you are chronically overwhelmed, reactive, shut down, or unpredictable, your child's nervous system will adapt to that. Not because you're bad, but because nervous systems synchronize. When you regulate yourself, when you pause, when you breathe through frustration, when you soften instead of escalate, you are literally co-regulating with your child's body. You are teaching them what calm feels like and how to access it. That is attachment in action. And love languages are a beautiful reference point. They can guide our behavior. They can help us notice each other. They can bring intention and creativity into our relationships, but they are not the root system. The real work, the root work, is attachment. Okay? If we get too focused on what love looks like, the gifts, the words, the plans, the visible expressions, we might be missing what love actually feels like. And what builds security, it's the steadiness of knowing that love is still here, even when we're tired, even when we disagree, even when the dinner burns or the trip gets canceled. That's what your child's nervous system is encoding. So yes, keep learning each other's love languages. Keep bringing beauty and thoughtfulness into your relationships. Those things matter, but do the deep wiring too. Slow down enough to regulate, repair when you rupture, stay present in the hard moments, because that is what grows those roots, and roots are what allow that love to last. If you are excited to learn more about nervous system science or the science of attachment, please visit theparentinglab.org. Labs 4 and 5 of the Parenting Lab series dig deep into all of what we've talked about today. Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to see you again next week, where we'll continue to explore the art and science of parenting and put your parenting to the test. Take care, everyone.